So I did find that very comforting at the time, and now I could, if I go to the synagogue and I'm listening to them chanting the prayers, there's a certain emotional pull that I feel, and it's on emotional level, and my mind says, "Are you nuts? This is all baloney." But because I grew up with it, there is a certain amount of memory and emotional thing that's all tied to the music. It's not tied to the rituals, and it's not tied to anything else. So if I do end up going to one, which I very occasionally do, it's the melodies that provide an emotional reaction to me, and not really the practice of what's going on. Although I will say uh, when I did the memorial service for my mother, the rabbi that I used, I do admire him, even though he comes from a Hasidic background with a very religious, narrow point of view that I don't really accept. But his energy and his dedication to what he believes in, to me, is very admirable. Because some of the clergy people, they're like the dead, they're like the living dead walking and teaching the dead. There's nothing there. They're teaching a dead book, and they are dead as they're teaching it. That's the way it feels. But with this rabbi, that's not the case. He's very much into it, and I even said to him once, I said, "You're the only Orthodox rabbi." My mother went to several Orthodox synagogues, and I would go with her sometimes. I said, "That doesn't make me feel like I'm back in the 1830s in Europe." Because some of them are very much that way. It's like, but so what I will say is that, and again, I was going to get into this eventually. Anyhow, the book that I'm working on is really talking about the undoing of what religions have done and what the Bible has done. And so the fact that I have this strong Jewish background and understand that whole environment is helping me to deal with what I'm reading now, what I'm researching now. So what I really wanted to share with you tonight is the fact that, for me, we all knew Carl, and we all knew his mediumship, which was incredible. And yet, what has come through 5 years ago at our 40th anniversary was that we are to become our own mediums. And this is really a very true statement from the way I'm seeing everything and the way things are happening. And I can use myself as an example. Now, because Carl entrusted me with the church, and he wanted me to continue it, it kind of forced me to be put on a platform. And by platform, I mean what the spiritualist definition of being on stage in front of a church giving messages. That's what I mean on a platform, not anything else. And I know that can be taken another way. But it forced me there. It forced me in front of a group of people. It forced me to be giving lectures. Now, that had kind of developed with Carl. The lecturing didn't bother me so much, but the mediumship, I wasn't doing it at all. And it was terrifying for me at first, because I was barely scraping the surface of connecting with the spirit world and bringing information through. And what has struck me in the last few days, and the last few weeks especially, is that yes, I've been in front of you, bringing you information, bringing you connections to the spirit world. I'm much more comfortable doing it in trance, as you all know. Doing that doesn't bother me, but doing the message work that's going to be done on Saturday, I don't connect with it as well. That doesn't mean I can't do it, but I don't feel that the amount of evidence and information that comes through is deep enough to really call myself a medium like that. Now I know there's a medium in Britain. His name is I can't think of it right now. But he's an excellent trance medium. He's an excellent trance healer. He will not publicly do platform mediumship, giving messages from spirit, because he feels he can't, that's not his forte. And he doesn't want to portray, he respects mediumship enough and spiritualism enough not to do a halfway job. That wasn't the words that wanted to come out of my mouth, but so he doesn't do it publicly, but he's an excellent medium at what he does, and I guess I kind of followed in his footsteps, because I've kind of shied away from doing the message work, and the trance work comes to me easily. But the point is that if I go back into time, and I go back, Carl's gone 15 years. I go back 20, 25 years. Okay. While Carl was still alive, I was working on the books, and they somehow were getting information into my head and leading me to the right places. So I was, in a sense, being a medium, but not being in front of a group of people. And as things have evolved, I'm much more obviously comfortable being in front of a group of people. But the point is that if I could be someone was basically very non-mediumistic per se, but it developed over time and it opened up over time with practice, then you can do the same thing. And the point is that no one's asking you to go on a platform and be in front of a group of people to do it. What is important is that you have the connection between yourself and the world of spirit in order to receive guidance and information for yourself. Okay, it's just like if you go, I'm in a very contradictory kind of time in my life, because Carl used to teach the Bible as a book of psychic history, a book of mediumistic history, and it is, but it also has a lot of man-made stuff in it, and a lot of stuff that should be thrown out. And the point is, the more I've been doing researching for the book, the proportions have really, really changed, so that the amount of stuff that should be thrown out is probably getting close to 93%. That's how misrepresentative the Bible actually is. And I know people who are be Christians and believe that God dictated it. That is so incorrect and so I don't even have the words to describe that anymore, because it's just nonsense. And so to go back and start quoting the Bible, it starts making me feel, well, like this doesn't make much sense. But there are the mediumistic truths were left there. They were probably left there because the people who were editing it didn't really understand the mediumship, and therefore they left it there by accident. But it's there. So you take the prophet Elijah. He went into a cave, and he still wanted to find God in the cave. And then there was an earthquake, and God wasn't in the earthquake. There was thunder and lightning, and God wasn't in the thunder and lightning. And then he heard a still small voice, and God was in the still small voice. As Jesus said, you need to turn within. God is within. It's that still small voice that will guide you and educate you and lead you. And that is what the rapport that you need, that is so beneficial to build up. And you build that up by going within. Some people call it sitting in the power. Susan says you should be sitting as the power, becoming the divine crystalline energy as we're now learning to become, and to sit in that, and to merge with spirit people, to merge with your spirit guides, to merge with your spirit loved ones, and to sit in that energy. And then eventually you will start to have to either hear them or feel them or have an impression of them. You may feel energy pressing on your head. You may have all kinds of sensations, but that will build things up so that you can have the guidance, it's really our birthright to have the guidance of spirit. But the way religions have pulled us away from mediumship, so that we're taught that God is up in the sky and mediums are over there, and you have to go to a medium to connect with spirit and to find out. And that's not to put mediums down, because most of us don't have the ability that if we really need some strong guidance, you go to a medium. But it's also something that you can develop within yourself. And part of what's been going on with me in the last 2-3 months is the fact that I've become aware of how much spirit has been guiding me in this research that I'm doing for this new book. And again, I'm not sitting here bragging, because what I'm saying is, if I could do it coming from a place of not being able to do much of any of it, and things are coming so strongly, you can do it too. It's a matter of opening your mind and opening your heart and being willing to listen, okay? To give them the space. So when something pops into your head, it's like you consider it and really take a look at it. I cannot begin to tell you the amount of times in the last 2-3 months that I pick up a book to do research in, that I've started. One of the books I started maybe 10-15 years ago, and I read a little bit of it and I put it down. And if I had read that book then, I think I would have lost my mind. I mean, I had a hard enough time accepting the information in it now, being that of everything I know. Most of you know that Carl brought through The Angel Without a Name, and that the first conversation we had was that the Bible was changed, and I was still very much in my Jewish mindset, and that was fighting words. I was having a very difficult time with that conversation, to the point that A1 finally said, "Okay, I see I can't convince you. Prove me wrong. Go out and do research and prove me wrong." And eventually, that's what I did. I started reading Bibles and found out, yes, the Bible was changed. And now, like 20-30 years later, I'm finding out that, yeah, but what A1 said was true. The Bible has been changed, but it is so much deeper and so much more than I ever thought. It goes down 10,000 feet more. And the book I was reading confirmed all that, and I wouldn't have been ready for that back then. Knowing that and reading what I was reading, it's still, I call it like so mind blowing that I couldn't think. There was one day I just stopped functioning. Oh, well, I can't say I stopped functioning. I couldn't do any more work. My mind, it was like I was in la la land. My mind couldn't focus, because it was such a radical difference of what the truth was to what people think. That it took me quite 2-3 days to just process it and to understand it. So, and that's what's been happening. I call it being slammed through a wall, because things are so much different than what you would anticipate. I do want to share with you the latest thing that I've discovered, because to me it's mind-boggling. The book, when I approached this whole book, the title of it is "Resurrecting the Evidence of How the Bible has Suppressed Women, Gays, and Mediums." And I thought that in my mind, when I first started this, that it would take me going through major parts, most of the Bible, in order to prove this. And for some reason, for a number of years, I've been thinking about writing a book about Adam and Eve. And so I kind of started there. And what I've learned is that whole book, this whole book can be just dealing with Adam and Eve and really pretty much cover everything. Um, and that's what is so mind-boggling. Um, so what I came across about a week ago is that the author I was reading is a feminist. So she's looking at the story of Adam and Eve from a female point of view, which of course, if you look at that whole story, it's not very female friendly. You have a male God who creates a woman out of a rib, a part of a man, and then the woman listens to the serpent and then eats the apple that was forbidden to eat, or the fruit that actually is the fruit, it's not an apple. And then and then God is all angry and he curses the snake, and that led her astray, curses her, curses the man, throws them out of the Garden of Eden. They have to work for a living. Women have to have childbirth pains, and on and on. That's the way it's told. What's so interesting to find out, and again, we are all programmed in this Judeo-Christian mindset, and most of us haven't looked far beyond the Judeo-Christian mindset, was that in the ancient Middle East, you had a whole array of different cultures. You had the Egyptians, you had the Babylonians, you had the Assyrians, you had the Canaanites, you had the Philistines, you had a whole bunch of other places. You could go into even take it to Greece and so forth. All these countries believed in many gods. It's called polytheism. They believed in many gods. Some of the gods were male and some of the gods were female. They were called goddesses. The interesting thing, in every other culture that I mentioned, if you go into their creation stories, it is the female who creates the universe, not the male. And at some point, it's actually she's giving birth to the universe. So it's quite that part in itself is kind of interesting, that the Jews are the only ones that have a male God to create the universe. What this author said was very interesting, because she said if the people who lived when this story was finally written down and would read it, they were educated in the symbology of what the story was all about. They would understand what it meant. And it wasn't what I just discussed. That is far from it. It's almost the opposite. The other thing that Spirit just threw on me one day was talking about going through the looking glass, the story about Alice going through the looking glass and everything's opposite the way things are. And I'm to use that illusion in the book, so that I write a chapter of the way things are. And this chapter that I'm about to tell you about is going to be the Adam and Eve story from Eve's point of view, going through the looking glass and everything's reversed. So what this author said was that the serpent, who Christianity calls the Satan and the tempter, and a very evil thing, represented wisdom and represented the goddess. All goddesses in all those countries I mentioned, and several places, other places, even Australia and North America and so forth, the serpent was attached to the goddess. And so when in the Adam and Eve story, God comes through and curses the serpent and curses Eve, he's driving a wedge between Eve and goddess worship. Now, goddess worship had some very interesting features. They had some, first of all, part of what they did was similar to what we do in our church. They would come for mediumship. They would come for spirit messages. They called them prophecies. They called them divination. Okay, it's all different words meaning the same thing. That was part of their rituals of what was conducted there. And their mediums were often they were often people of dual genders, so that there was a male and female component to them, and they were the ones that were giving these messages. So we had the gay people, and we had the mediumship, and that is all being severed by the wedge that the priests and the scribes, the Levites, who were writing this down, created this storyline, and it was to represent staying away from the goddess worship. They were very, very threatened by any other religion, because part of what was going on, and I keep reading this over and over, is that the ancient Israelite religion was identical, absolutely identical. The rituals and everything they did was identical to what the Canaanites did, which was their neighbors. They did the same types of things, the same types of worship, but the Israelites said that God was a male and one and only. He was the only God. And in polytheism, there were many gods, and of course they worshiped the goddess as well. The thing that is also very interesting is that I'll take it back to my own personal experience. When I was about 10 years old, my mother decided that the synagogue that was in Port Jervis, which is the closest town, wasn't giving me enough of a Hebrew education, a Jewish education, and she wanted me to be bar mitzvahed, and doing a lot more than what was happening in Port Jervis. So I started going to Middletown. And when I went to Middletown, I started learning all about the service, and I would attend the services every week. But then in Hebrew school, we would read these books, and there was a book that was written about Abraham. The story, and the story is not biblical, so it's not in the Bible. It's in what's called the Mishnah, which is kind of like backstories of explaining things. And it talks about Abraham as a boy, and he's working in his father's idol shop. And what happens is that Abraham realizes there's only one God, and these idols are nonsense. So his father goes out of the shop, and he takes a hammer and he smashes them all the idols. And the father comes back in and says, "What happened here?" He says, "My business is now ruined." And Abraham says to him, "Well, they had an argument, and the biggest idol got mad at everybody else and smashed them." And the father said, "That's ridiculous. They can't do that." He said, "So why are you worshiping them?" Okay, so this is like a backstory, and it shows you the mindset of Abraham, who was supposed to be the first person who listened to Yahweh, the singular God, he was a father of Judaism. It turns out that that's not the case at all. In fact, when Abraham went to, somebody's coming in. When Abraham went to Canaan, where he was led to, he ended up going to a tree. The tree was important in goddess worship. When he got there, he received communication from spirit about what he was to do. Now, part of the reason for that was it was a center for mediumship, and there was a certain amount of energy to build up there, which trees can help to support. But it was also part of Asherah worship, and that's part of the reason it was the mediumship was practiced there, because it was part of the Canaanite religion, not part of the Jewish religion. And these books that I'm reading are talking about how the Hebrew people were not monotheistic. They didn't believe in one God until, for centuries, they constantly had worship. They were going to Asherah and they were going to Yahweh. And at one point they said the two of them were married. that Asherah was Yahweh's wife, and they found pottery which says that, which says Yahweh and his Asherah bless you. So all this mythology that I took was true for most of my life. It's mythology. And even Yahweh as a God has been coming forth. How do I say this? He evolved from the Canaanite gods. He was a Canaanite god, and then the Hebrews kind of took him over. And if you think about it, how many of you would put any faith in any god called any of the Canaanite gods, any of the Egyptian gods, Zeus or Apollo, or any of the Greek gods? Would we consider them deities these days? No, because we've been taught that there's this Jewish God, and then there's Jesus, and and the Islamic people have Allah, and they are the gods, and we don't really accept the other ones anymore. And that was also done by design, more by the Catholic Church when they decided to get rid of all the pagan religions all around and close them down in around late 391, and about that time, just before 400. That's when all that was finally shut down and disappeared. And so we're left with this mythology. And so part of what this book is going to try to prove is that God is energy, God is crystalline energy, and this whole idea of a man sitting on a throne was just created. Now, the other thing that I found so interesting, at one point, Susan, we work most Mondays together, bringing forth this information, and I'm learning this new way of viewing things. So at one point we were doing this meditation, and somehow we were doing this meditation, and she had us, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I was seeing the hands of God doing something. So I was making God a person myself, even though I know better. And I was watching this as I'm meditating and going, this isn't right. You can't be seeing human hands. God is energy. Why are you interpreting this? So even though I know this, we are so ingrained to think of it that way that it just pops up into our consciousness. And this is part of what Susan is trying to reteach us of the spiritual amnesia and learning all these things, so I can understand why it was so easy to think of God as a man or a woman going through bringing forth different things. But in reality, we have to bring it back that it's really energy. And this is what so this is what I've been learning. So the point is that the whole Adam and Eve story is totally inside out, and it's all about Eve being the wise woman and bringing the knowledge forth to Adam, and not being the temptress and all the other negative connotations that are heaped on her by the religions, because they wanted to keep people away from understanding that there was a whole other system beyond them. Because if you understand that, then you no longer support them. Just like I don't go to the synagogue. I go once in a while. Sometimes I get a nostalgic thing, at a Jewish holiday or something. I'll watch a service on Zoom or something. But it's not my reality. It's kind of like my memory process of where I've come from. But so the whole point was that these priests, whether you talk about the Jewish ones when they were writing the Old Testament or the Christian ones centuries later, they wanted to control over the people's minds because they wanted them to keep coming and putting the money into the collection basket. They wanted them to keep 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 the um, keep the flow of money coming to them. So that was what this was all about. So so I guess my message to you is that, as some of you were talking about today, that sitting as the power, connecting with the divine crystalline energy. I know when I do it now, I feel a whole change. I feel the energy. I feel a shift in me when I enter that energy. And the whole purpose idea is eventually to always be in that energy, but it's going to take us a while to accomplish that. But to once you experience, you make those connections, and then stay there in that connections for 10, 15 minutes or so, you will be building up a rapport with the world of spirit, so that if they need to plop an idea in your head, the telephone wires have been connected. That's the easiest way to say, even though we're in a wireless age right now. That they can do it, just like the things that they're doing with me right now. It's like I can't say there's someone saying don't read this book now, but for some reason I put it down and then I pick it up when it's more appropriate. And it's been happening so much that it's like mind-boggling, because it's almost like they're directing how I should find this information so that I can process it, and it's really been a fascinating journey. So Carl founded the church. His main thing was saying, I will not have you be ignorant of the gifts of the Spirit. And so by tuning into, by going into the divine crystalline energy, you are developing your own mediumship. You are developing your own gifts, not necessarily to stand in front of a group of people and give messages, but to help you in your own path of life, to all of a sudden get this impression, I shouldn't go this way, I should go that way. And then find out, yeah, that was the correct thing to do. And where did that impression come from? Did it come from your mind? Did it come from a spirit person? It's hard to say. But when you start opening up to this energy and learning to acknowledge what's happening when you receive something, when something pops into your head, and saying, not necessarily saying where did that thought come from, but start to analyze, maybe somebody's trying to tell me something, and start to analyze what the information is. These are things that will enrich your own life, because you're listening to your own spirit within your own inner voice. And that this is where we are at this time. We're living in a time of change. You don't need me to tell you that. But we are going from the world of the age of ignorance into the age of knowledge. And as this happens, the change that's going to happen, it'll be like I was talking about Alice going through the looking glass. Things are going to be so radically different when we finish this process than they are now. So there are lots of changes a lot of things have to be eliminated. A lot of things will change, and in order for us to get to where we need to go. And having this guidance from the spirit world, who can see into our future and can guide our steps to keep us safe, is very, very crucial in this time. Because we're coming to the time in the age of knowledge, everyone will be their own medium. Everyone will have a reconnection to the world of spirit, because part of the reason is that the whole frequency of the earth and all our consciousnesses will be on a much higher level. So the separation between the physical world and the spirit world is going to be a lot less. So it's going to be easier to make that leap and to bridge that gap, I should say, and to be able to connect with spirit, because that's where we're headed towards. We're headed back towards where we all realize that we are gods, just like Jesus taught, and that we have the ability to create our own reality. So these are things that Carl taught in some ways, or he laid the foundation for us, so that as this new information is coming forth, we're building upon it. Because without the foundation that he provided us, you'd be going back to the churches and I'd be going back to the synagogues, and we would be in our own old mindsets of the way we thought things should be. So we are definitely way beyond any of that. So it is with that knowledge and appreciation of what Carl established for us 45 years ago today, giving us a school to go to learn about the gifts of the Spirit, to learn about mediumship, to learn about all the things that we have learned in the past 45 years, and continue to learn. So it is my privilege to be able to continue what he started and to carry on in his footsteps. Although obviously we're all different people and it's all different. But I do want to thank all of you for taking this journey with me. And I just don't mean tonight. I mean, as Fenton can validate, when I reopened the church, I was very shaky, and it was not an easy thing for me to start to do, and it took me a while to grow comfortable, not only leading the church, but to be working as a medium to the best of my capacity. But the thing that I feel honored about is because for me, the Gifts of the Spirit Church there's always a place for learning. It was always the knowledge that was important to share. And that part of it was always the easier part for me to bring forth, was to share the different things that I was experiencing. So I think I've kind of rambled on quite a bit tonight, but I did want to talk about the beginnings of the church.